Well, continuing our talk with Mr. Cannan about the situation with the Sefton Group. This is a fast-moving story. I mean, there's questions down for the House of Keys, isn't there, tomorrow. Also, other parts of the media have actually indicated there has been other loans to the Sefton Group. Have you been able to verify that?
Well, this is incredible. I mean, we read today in the Isle of Man Examiner that last year a £450,000 loan was given to the group from the Economic Development Fund, of which they've paid back something in the region of £200,000. But nobody knew about this, and the Treasury Minister has indicated that it wasn't a secret, but he had the virus to do it. We've got to ask ourselves what else is going on here, and where else, what other jurisdiction would you find a business that has so many sort of ex-government connections with it, from a former chief minister who is chairman of the group, to other government ministers and a range of shareholders who all have close connections to government, receiving a bailout in this way. I'm afraid that most people would view this highly suspiciously, and I'm afraid if this happened in the UK, the government would probably have to resign.
But Mr. Cannan, it's a done deal. There's nothing you can do about it now, is it? I mean, effectively, it went through the stock exchange and all that. We were notified about it yesterday. The money has left the Isle of Man government and is now with the Sefton Group.
Right. Well, what we need to do is to get to the bottom of this. We need the truth, we need the facts, and then we need to make a decision following that as to whether, on balance, it was the right decision, or on balance, whether it's not. But personally, as it stands at the moment, I cannot see why taxpayers' money has been used to bail out a group who were purely the masters of their own downfall, and may I add, in which some of the directors who were actively involved at the time this group decided to become a big property company are still in place at the moment, and that, quite frankly, is not acceptable.
Well, you're putting all these things up. Now, you had a briefing yesterday, didn't you, before the announcement was made? Did you not ask all these sort of questions?
On Friday.
Yeah, on Friday.
We were given a briefing. It was a fairly short, concise briefing. We were given the facts of the deal, of the restructuring. But again, I mean, it's quite incredible the way this has been done and presented, because we were given very little time to react to it. I obviously had the weekend in between, a weekend to try and gather my thoughts and our thoughts, and gather some of the facts and try and work out some of the reasoning behind this, and also look at some of the possible solutions. So, from a timescale perspective, it's been a very difficult period to work in. But as the more that we understand of this story, the more questions there are around it.
Let's make it quite clear, because it's always easy just to say they've got it wrong. But in your view, it should have been allowed to go into administration. Is that what you're saying?
Well, again, there's a technicality there. What I am saying is that there was a very profitable part of that company, or there seems to be, which is the leisure business, and the property side is effectively, or seems to be, a massive burden on the business. I think there would have been a solution. If the directors had looked hard enough, they would have probably found a solution for the leisure business. And I'm afraid that as far as the property business goes, well, that may well have had to have been part of a liquidation process.
I mean, again, it's not definite, but I mean, there was stories that it really did run out of money, really. I mean, it got to the stage where, last week, they had to have something done.
One has to assume that they had reached the end, and that creditors were demanding money. In which case, one has to ask again, have we put our money basically into a company that's effectively insolvent? Because if we have, then we're actually just we are completely wasting taxpayers' money, and the position is not being stated fairly or clearly to us.
And potentially, of course, there could be another cash call, I suppose, at some point if this isn't enough money. I mean, what would happen then? What would you?
It would appear from the refinancing that there are a number of winners from this. There's a London a restructuring debt company that's taken on the Palace for £11 million. One assumes that they're actually at an interest rate of 8%, so they're actually happy, going to be very happy. The company that put together this deal, it's an Isle of Man local company, they're going to be happy. They will have taken a nice little chunk. The lawyers involved in this will have taken a nice chunk out of it. The management will be happy, they're still in their job. The shareholders have still got their company, and as far as I can see at the moment, the only real loser at the moment to this is the taxpayer.
Do you think you're in have all the facts in front of you. I mean, do you think things are being hidden, or I mean, is this the end of it, or do you think things will drip out later on?
We need some answers. We need an answer of why £450,000 was paid out of the Economic Development Fund last year. We need answers around what solutions have been sought from the management, what guarantees the government has sought, why nobody from the directors has resigned over this. I'd also like to know whether there are any claims against any of the directors and insurance claims from either the shareholders or the banks. And I'd also like to know, and confirmations, whether the banks did have clauses in their loan agreements to enable a receiver to be appointed.
And all these sort of things you're going to follow up then, are you? I mean, you're going to be tailoring questions. It's going to be like a Pinewood here, isn't it?
It's not just me. I mean, there's a number of MHKs with very, very serious concerns about this. And the manner of which it's been dealt with, the parties and the individuals involved, and the explanations that have been given. And we're going to have to get to the bottom of it. And if it takes 3 or 4 months to get to the bottom of it, then it's going to take 3 or 4 months.
And you would have seen, if the worst had come to the worst, you'd have let 300 people be out of a job.
No, because I don't think that ever would have been a realistic proposal. The leisure business, the Sefton Hotel and the Palace Hotel, primarily are core businesses. They trade profitably, and they would have kept on trading. I don't know the situation with Parkinson's. I need to understand that more, but it's interesting to note they're currently in the middle of a government contract. I don't see why they couldn't have been paid through perhaps alternative means, but I need to understand that more. And yes, I realise there's aspects to the Sefton Group, particularly the property companies, the properties that are owned, that seem to me to be unsellable or overpriced, or possibly both. So, there are clearly there's massive problems here. But it seems to me, that we are getting ourselves involved in a situation that the directors were responsible for creating, and the directors themselves should be responsible for sorting out.
But clearly you don't know as much, maybe, therefore, as the Chief Minister and the Finance Minister. But don't you think they have done the best in a very difficult situation?
Well, let's go right back to the beginning of this conversation, Paul. Over the decades, there have been a number of companies that have gone to the wall, a number of people who've lost their jobs, a number of people at the moment who are going through redundancy procedures. Why have we not been there to bail out these companies at the time? It's a very, very tough and difficult thing to do. But effectively, you live by the sword and you die by the sword when you're in business. And as I said, there are a number of businesses that I know who are currently taking substantial risks in growing their companies, growing their employed staff, and the directors of those firms have clearly a lot to lose if things go wrong. And I don't think the government's going to be there to bail them out, and I don't see why that should be the case in the Sefton Group.
I got the impression, though, because TT did seem to creep into this whole thing, the timing issue more than anything. I mean, weeks away from the TT, if these sort of stories about the creditors weren't helping out anymore, the hotels literally weren't getting what they needed. Let's suppose, I mean, this is just hypothetically, that something had to be done, didn't they? I mean, this day came that they may not have been able to settle anything.
It's highly feasible that the banks simply threatened the Isle of Man government with foreclosure and to shut.
But you don't know.
We don't know. Yes, but everything's hypothetical at the moment. But the point is that nobody was going to let a reasonably profitable trading business just go to the wall when there was so much debt associated with it. And unless we're going to be told otherwise by the Treasury Minister, and even if it did go to the wall, would there have been a buyer tomorrow? I think there probably would. And I think that there were solutions out there, and there are solutions out there that could quite easily have been found. And it seems to me that this is simply a bailout mechanism to perhaps protect shareholder interests and to perhaps protect the interests of the directors and management.
Well, as I said before, this is a fast-moving story, and there'll be plenty more on this, and it certainly has proved an amazing amount of interest from everybody. So we'll have to, every day there'll be no doubt more coming out about this, and we'll be following it up.